Okay, flavor of the month obviously are the Russians. We have to understand where the Russians are coming from before you can say, oh, they're just crazy, what are they doing, why are they so aggressive? Okay, first things first, the birth rate collapsed at the end of the Soviet period. There are now more 50-somethings than there are teenagers, and most of the teenagers have tuberculosis. So the Russian capacity to maintain a consumer-based system is already gone, and their capacity to maintain the Red Army in just 5 years is not even questionable anymore. They know they will have less than half the number of soldiers that they have right now. So if the Russians are going to move militarily on anything ever, they have to do it now. Number two is actually worse. The Russian educational system, after you finish with college, you then go into an apprenticeship program for several years where you train with a skilled engineer. That system collapsed back in 1988, was never reconstituted. They've never had the money. Which means that the youngest cadre of people with the full suite of technical training are now in their 50s. The average age of Russian male mortality is 59. Russia is going from the country with the highest skilled labor cost to becoming a country with no skilled labor pool. The missile forces, the rail network, the Red Army, the natural gas system, the oil system, all of them are going to break down in the next 10 years. So again, if they're going to move, they have to move now. So that's the why now. Here's the why. The green area in the middle, if you're going to live in Russia, that's the place to live. It's not too cold, not too hot. Well, let me rephrase that. It is too cold, it is too hot, but it's livable. This is the wheat belt. It goes right down the spine of Eurasia. We got Europe at the top there, what we consider Asia at the bottom. Now, at the edges of this, you've got shoulder territories that aren't so hostile that you can't move through them, but they are too hostile to have substantial populations. So these big, wide open spaces, the Eurasian steppe. Beyond them, you've got physical barriers. The Karakum Desert, the Carpathian Mountains, the Tian Shan. Russian foreign policy, going back centuries, has been to expand through those buffer areas and anchor in those obstacles and then concentrate their forces on the access points. The southern two, the Mongols used to conquer Russia several times. The westernmost ones, the Persians used. The northwestern ones, the Turks used. The Germans have never met a square inch of Poland that they did not thoroughly enjoy marching across. The Swedes came in 3 times from the Baltic, and even the Canadians invaded via the White Sea. Anyone with a boat played in that one. So for the Russians to survive, they've got to expand and anchor. If they don't do that, they're doomed. And they're going to be doomed pretty soon because of their demographics. So here's the general plan as it's being played out right now. The red, that's your ethnic Russians. The orange are people who are not ethnic Russians but who speak Russian, consider themselves at least affiliated. And the greens, that's what I like to call the Stockholm Syndrome states. They really miss the Soviet Union. They want to be Russian. They just want to be brought into the fold. So based on your politics, they're either collaborators or helpers. Step 1, grab the Crimea. Oh, sorry. There's the 5 anchors that we're concerned about. These are the access points in the West. Step 1, grab the Crimea. Check. Step 2, destabilize Ukraine as a country. We've seen what that's been doing over in the East. You remember when it looked like the rebels were getting beaten back by the Ukrainian military? That was a trap. The Russians waited for the Ukrainians to throw everything in, and then they blew up the leadership of the entire Ukrainian military. So Ukraine as a military entity is, in effect, gone. The buffer zone that was established is in the process of being broken through by the rebels. And the next part of this is to start rebellions like they did in eastern Ukraine and a number of other cities that are pro-Russian. The biggest one of note is Odessa, which is actually in western Ukraine. If Odessa breaks away, Ukraine as an economic entity disappears. Ukraine's biggest export is wheat. It flows down a river, the Dnieper, to the port of Odessa. So if Odessa falls, that's it, because Ukrainian wheat is not high enough quality to be consumed in Europe. It has to go to the Black Sea. It has to go to the Mediterranean, and then out to the Middle East primarily, and they won't be able to get it out. Step 3, take over the Stockholm Syndrome states formally and plug the Caucasus gaps. Step 4, put Ukraine out of its misery. And step 5, plug the gaps, which puts Russia into direct military conflict with Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, and Romania, all of which are EU states and all of which are NATO allies. The question is time frame here. If this happens in 2 years, if they move that fast, the United States will probably still be engaged, and we probably will send troops to Poland and Romania. But if it happens in 4 years, The shale revolution will have come full circuit, will be completely energy independent, and we will be dependent upon the Eastern Hemisphere for less than 2% of our GDP. The belt of countries from Estonia down to Romania, every single one of them, and we consider them to be some of our firmest allies, but from Estonia to Romania, all 10 of those countries are now more dependent on Russian oil and Russian natural gas in absolute and relative terms than they were when they got independence 15 years ago. 25 years ago, excuse me. Defending them is a hard sell, because basically what they're asking us to do is to bleed for them while they continue to use Russian energy. Huh? In 4 years, this is someone else's problem. And so we're going to be in this weird situation of the French asking the Germans to invade Poland to fight the Russians. I love what I do.